Hi everybody, my name is Adam and I am a grateful recovered drug addict and alcoholic. And I say that both, I hope that I'm sticking with the singleness of purpose. I'm going to stick with the alcohol and I'm going to say outside issues when it comes to drugs. Because this isn't AA, out of respect. I'm just going to go ahead and start with when I was 3 years old, my very first memory in life was being dropped off at an orphanage is what I thought it was. It was a boarding school. Me and my older brother John, 2 years, 4 months, and 6 days apart. And I saw him getting out of a hospital type of van that my mom was driving, and he jumped right on out and hopped on a big blue. And I was under the seat crying. So I started my life off with abandonment issues and a lot of insecurity. And I pretty much followed anything my older brother John did. And, so we were up in this boarding school from the age of 3 to 8. I saw my mom on Thanksgiving and on Christmas every year. She had a boyfriend at the time. I really liked that guy, and I really loved seeing my mother. He took us fishing. We kind of had a little bit of a childhood there for those 2 weeks on both of those vacations. But other than that, I was kind of following my brother's lead. And so there was some abuse while I was in that place as well. Some sexual abuse. I had house parents that threw me in an older kid's dorm because I got in a lot of trouble with my older brother. I was already a rebellious, self-willed kid. I did what my brother did. One Christmas, when I was 8 years old, my mother showed up and thought it was a regular vacation. We went over to my grandmother's house and I talked to my father for the first time. Didn't even know what my father looked like. Didn't know anything about my father. And my mom asked if we'd like to move in with my father. He lived in Page, Arizona. Alcoholism does run in my family, but my father had quit drinking, but he had all the characters of a dry trunk. So we moved out with my dad. He's a workaholic, provided for us great, but me and my brother ended up out there and we started drinking before school, elementary school. There was a Safeway in town. And that's when I had my second drink. I had one drink before, but I really don't remember that one too well, but I do remember this drink. And let me tell you, when I had that first drink, it changed everything. It was peppermint snobs out of the Safeway there. And we were in a small town, Page, Arizona, and they had the middle school, the elementary school, and the high school all in one little deal. And you had to walk through the park where the headbangers were, and everybody in Safeway was right there, and you hit that hill. And so my brother snagged a bottle of that peppermint snobs. And, I was always a fearful child. I pretty much did everything that my brother did. Of course, I'm in elementary school, and he's a couple grades ahead of me, and we got separated. But I tell you, man, that alcohol, we just split a little old half pint of that. I remember very clearly. We started doing that on a regular basis. And I felt that was my solution. It gave me courage. And that was my big thing. It helped me overcome my fears. And I fell in love with alcohol. That was my solution. Later on, a little bit further on in the story, me and my brother ran away from home a lot. My dad had a little bit of hidden problems because we were troublemakers. We would steal stuff. We'd get caught stealing stores. We were smoking weed. Get a hold of some outside issues as well, apart from the older kids. My brother always had the connections. So we got in a lot of trouble. And then one time we ran away from home and I had my first alcoholic death at 11 years old. Died of alcohol poisoning and frozen death in the park. They revived me. My brother was caught in a blackout, beating up a store clerk, trying to get some wine out of the store. I got my butt ripped real good that time. I mean, so good that I had some broken ribs and black eyes. But my dad sent me to school and told me to tell him a little tetherball deal had messed me up. And I was really good at lying about that. But I had a counselor, Mr. Gerald, I can still remember his name, that was already on me because we were taking the little outside issues, deals you can order magazines, White Cross speed pills, and all kinds of stuff. And I was in elementary tripping out in school already. And I was in middle school back then, actually. Yeah, I was getting up in middle school. And so that led to foster care for a little while. Oh, and I had an awesome stepmother. We did get to see my mom every once in a while. She was here in Texas. That's out in Arizona. So the custody change happened. The custody change happened, and me and my brother stole one of my dad's cars. He was a mechanic from his auto parts store. 1968 Camaro. My brother drove that along with some weapons. Went down towards the reservation, robbed the store, took cigarettes, took beer, filled the gas tank up, and we were driving out. And I had to stop by and get a Navajo taco because I had a school lunch ticket and I was hungry. And so we went, we did that, and it was a high-speed chase. We tried to hit the border of Utah because it was only 11 miles away. And they caught us, broke the windows out, dragged me and my brother out. And that led into foster care as well, because I ran away from the foster care that I was already in. And so my brother got shipped off to Texas automatically. Me, I had to go to court in Flagstaff, and my mom got custody of me, and that led me to Missouri City, Texas, outside of Houston. I get out. Once again, my brother's hooked up with all of the outside issue connections, all the drug connections. We're living in the suburbians of Houston, Missouri City, Texas. And so I got in a lot of trouble real quick. I went to my first rehabilitation center when I was 13 years old. And I just got to Texas. I tried to commit suicide because I didn't get my way and I couldn't go with my brother to a nightclub. And my mom put me in rehab. She tricked me by buying me a pack of cigarettes to get me to go to this rehab. And so we get to Orchard Creek Hospital in Rosenberg, Texas, and that's when the treatment facility started in my life. I remember she had to sign for cigarettes, and that's when I first was introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was 13 years old, I was in Rosenberg, Texas, and we went to a meeting out there. And I loved going to those meetings because I only got 7 cigarettes a day, and I would hit them ashtrays up, and you know, I didn't really think too much about AA, but I remember the brooms and chain smokers and just a bunch of old timers. That was about it for me. I wasn't done, not anywhere near done. So that led into a couple more. I went back to Orchard Creek a few months later, got in more trouble, and then the state of Texas got hold of me at 15 years old. I got shipped around until I was 18 years old. So I had a lot of institutions, wasn't too serious about getting sober, but I did lots of drinking, lots of drugging. I was already smoking crack and already shooting dope at that time. And I was in trouble for breaking into a house because we did some damage to my stepdad for saying something bad to my mom. We beat him up real bad and shot up his business. Not a very good thing. And not to get charges filed on us, we went and hid out in an abandoned house that was for sale, and somebody saw us in there, and they caught me with some drug paraphernalia and some other stuff, and that just got me sent off to TYC, Texas Youth Commission. Went into some rehabs from there, got out of there on juvenile parole, didn't stay sober, violated that parole in every possible kind of way. My older brother would get shipped off to a rehab, and I would start doing good, he would get out, and he would be doing bad, and then I'd go back to doing bad. I just wasn't serious about getting sober. And we go further on from that. So I get released off parole when I'm 18. I'd already had a few experiences where I had an overdose. First I went mentally insane on some LSD, and just lost, my brain stopped working. And then my heart went out, and they revived me from that. Admitted me back in. I was on lithium, and that's what triggered the two combination. Didn't work out so well. And so parole had spent lots of money on me. The state of Texas had. So they decided, hey, we're going to go ahead and kick you to the curb, let the adults get a hold of you. So me and my brother moved into our first apartment. My mother co-signed it. It was in Houston, Texas, off of Bissonnet Road. You know, on and off, we would hit the streets. Like I said, I smoked crack. We were all over town doing that, drinking, just getting in trouble. You know, I pretty much lived for drugs. I didn't know anything else. That was my solution to everything. Drugs and alcohol, both. Alcohol was always there for all of us. No matter But it increased really bad later on. So my brother was murdered when I was 18. We had been working for some telemarketer people. We got the job out of the newspaper, first department, and they happened to be the mafia. And they were doing a lot of illegal stuff. And because of that, we were running phone rooms, scamming people, doing a lot of really bad things, man, which I really regret because, number one, it got to my conscience the way that we were ripping people off. More drugs to try to numb that, to numb all that guilt, to numb all that pain. So, we had that apartment and we made good money, but, we hardly ever had food in our pantries or anything, man. And then he was murdered. He quit his job because he got conscious about what he was doing too. And I wasn't at the house that night that happened. And my whole life took a radical change when my older brother died. Because I don't think my older brother actually went on a date with a girl by himself, unless his little brother was with him. With all of his friends were my friends. So I guess I could say that, I pretty much followed anything my brother did. But I was definitely an alcoholic and drug addict. And so that led into the streets for a while. About 6 or 7 months I was out there on the streets, and I finally, after my brother died, I moved in with a girl that I had met, his parents, and her parents were real rich. And I stayed out there and did more and more drugs because they had lots of money. That eventually broke off, and I ended up 100% on the streets. And then caught a charge in a nightclub, numbers out in Houston. They gave me 5 years deferred adjudication probation. Of course, I lied. I didn't have no place to live, but I gave them an address that was a family member's, and they went ahead and verified for me. And I violated that right away, which sent me to state jail, Winchester State Jail, for a 2-year bid on the 5-year deferred adjudication charge. But they did give me a chance before they sent me straight there to go to the Texas house. And I stayed there, and I didn't complete that program either. So that's when I went to Winchester after that. But long story short, jails, institutions, and death. I'd experienced that and already had an overdose. I'd already been institutionalized. And in and out of this, I've been exposed to this program because they made me go to AA. I wish I would have got it way back then, but I didn't. So after all that's said and done, I do that. I get out. I'm out about a year. I moved to Phoenix, and then I moved back to Houston because I got in some trouble in Phoenix. I ended up on the streets out there, strung out on methamphetamines, and real bad. And came back out here to Texas, caught another charge, and ended up going back to and did some more time, another 2-year bid. And then after I got out of that, I went back to Tempe, Arizona, and I stayed out in Tempe, Arizona for probably about a year and a half. Had an apartment. My family offered me a great job. And I moderated because I was with a girl on and off through most of this. And, I moderated because I was one of the moderate drinkers that if I had a good enough reason, it talks about in the book here, that, I could stay sober for a little bit. And I actually could go to work and work a job, and I did that. But most of the time, my mind was on drinking and using. And I was very dishonest with her. I'd sneak off and have drinks and come home drunk. I'd go out and use. And so eventually our relationship crashed. She left me. I ripped the apartment out from underneath me. Ended up having to make some financial amends, which they didn't actually ask for any of the money back, which is by the grace of God that I offered it for going out on that lease. And that's not the only lease that I've messed up. So I'd get off the streets every once in a while, on and off the streets, in and out of jails, due to my drinking. It just pretty much became drinking and then crack and drinking. But drinking always really stayed. If I didn't have my alcohol, every morning I was shaking. I could not deal with life without a drink. I had to have my alcohol. All those other things came secondary to my alcohol. And I just kind of bounced around just fitting in wherever I could. I hopped a few trains, went to a few different states. states. I ended up stuck in Austin, Texas. And that's when the last apartment, I believe in 2000, that I ever had, it was a co-signed apartment. The guy who co-signed it had to kick the door in with a 9mm because he had perfect credit and we weren't leaving. And you know, that's just the kind of person I was, man. I didn't care about anybody, you know, it was always somebody else's fault. You know, that whole situation was their fault, but it turned into a flop pad, drug pad, squat, just like every other apartment I ever had. Turned into, you know, a squat. And this guy didn't want his credit ruined, so he got permission from the people to kick the door in and remove us. And that's what he did. And we left there, and I ended up back on the streets in Austin. And, you know, I pretty much stayed on the streets from that moment on since 2001. Stayed on the streets and in jail. So to get back to my drinking, that's when my hard liquor drinking really started up. I always had alcohol, and it was usually high gravity alcohol. It was usually the stuff that did the trick, but I became a whiskey drinker and pretty serious crack smoker there. And I stayed under a bridge out there in Austin for, I don't know, a good 10 years under the airport and I-35 bridge. I became a bum. I flew a sign, you know, and that was just my way of life. Whatever I had to do to get my money for alcohol, stealing, whatever, yahooing it, breaking windows to get it, trying to steal beer trucks to get it. The insanity of this disease, I went to anything to get alcohol. Because if I didn't have alcohol, I couldn't get out, I couldn't pick up a sign, I couldn't face the world. Like I said, it was my solution. And, you know, they talk about that in the book where it became a necessity. I had to have it, you know. And so, let's skip on over. So, in between all this, I did have a few times that I started coming into these rooms and I thought it was a lot. I had a few overdoses, you know, in between there. Had some time out there with some heroin and alcohol, which led me to overdosing, along with benzos. I did about 3 years on that heroin, on the drag out in Austin, and I got pretty strung out on it. It took me to some pretty low places. But even after those overdoses, I got out and we got high again, and we got drunk again, and did the same old. So, you know, God kept plucking me out of it by locking me up, by using my bad choices and just putting me in jail. And so I became the town drunk for Austin, Texas. You know, along with Sam Jones. I had probably about 80 to 90 enhanced public intoxications. You know, I couldn't stay out of jail for a week, you know, without getting snatched back up because I started having blackouts, doing things that I just didn't believe that I was doing. Because before I blacked out, I was the friendliest guy in the world, you know. I was flipping peace signs to people, just trying to get change, being friendly as far as I knew, and you know, next thing I know, after a certain amount of police reports, they're all saying the same thing, and I thought it was their fault. You know, they're lying on me. I got a jacket on me, you know. So I got a couple more drug charges in between all this. Went to 969 Travis State Jail. Got a couple of assault charges in between that. Alcohol led me to a lot of violent situations as well. You know, just I went to any length for that stuff, man, and I hurt and harmed a lot of people. Cost the state, police officers, you know, we didn't get along too well, and you know, they were always having problems with me. I wasn't a nice drunk, you know. So let me get to the solution now. So this round, you know, I've had several different what I thought were bottoms, you know, overdoses, coming into these rooms, thinking I worked the steps. I was out in Arizona, I went back there somewhere in between this. I'm not too good with dates. My family gave me a job back. You know, I went through a detox center called Charter Glenwood. I kicked alcohol, kicked heroin, kicked meth, crack, the whole nine, every bit of it. They gave me a job and just told me I had to make a meeting a day I was seriously thought I was at bottom. I was back on the streets again, just hopelessly defeated. And I stayed clean for a good while, but I was a dry drunk. I became a workaholic. I did the steps what I thought. I did the steps. I advised people, but I didn't really do the steps. We went through a little back to basic course in the halfway house I was at, Crossroads. And, they take you through the steps real fast with just anybody. And, so I thought I got through the steps and everything, but I was still full out in self-will. Matter of fact, I missed every principle of these steps. I knew I had a problem. That one was not hard. I knew I was powerless over alcohol and that my life was unmanageable. I knew I couldn't quit. But the one thing I didn't really identify with was that allergy that they talk about in the book. I did not understand that I was mentally or physically different from other people. That it was, something in my physical makeup that when I put alcohol in me, it creates that phenomenon of craving. That part I blew that off because I still thought I was an exception to the rule. If I just had enough willpower, I could do this. So I admitted I was powerless, but not in that way. And, and I believed that I was powerless from my past, but I could get the power back and I could manage my sobriety. And that was a big mistake because I didn't really truly work step one. Because, if you really truly work these steps, admit that you're powerless over alcohol and that your life is unmanageable. I think my life was unmanageable, and then I became powerless over alcohol. And as well, that it's not just alcohol that I'm powerless over. And it's not just that I'm unmanageable for. If you continue with the steps, I'm insane, and I need a power greater than me, and I'm my biggest problem. It talks about that in the book, self-centeredness, self-pity, selfish ambitions. All of those are the root of our problems. And fear, I was driven by 100 different forms of fear. Every decision I based in my life was off of fear, what this person's going to think about me, what this person's going to think about me, how to make my next move. I was manipulative. I was in self-will. And I was an example of self-will gone right fully. I was insane, literally. And I didn't know how to manage anything. And that's why I picked up alcohol to help me get to that spot and drugs, to where I thought I was in control of something until it stopped working for me and the consequences started getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And even with all the consequences that kept happening, I still picked up the use. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter if I was going back to state jail again. It didn't matter if I was under a bridge and homeless. It didn't matter if I just overdosed and got out of the hospital and I went back and scored another balloon. It didn't matter. None of that stuff kept me from picking up and using again. And that, to me, is truly what powerless means. I had lost the power to choose. I was beaten. I was defeated. I was hopelessly defeated and enslaved to this disease, not only because of the physical allergy, but because of the mental obsession that was over my life, that I would crowd out everything else, even the circumstances and the consequences that were coming towards me every single time. I would crowd it out of my mind, that great obsession, and just to have a drink, just to think that I can pull it off one more time, and this time it's going to be just a little bit different. Somehow or another I'll be able to manage it, I'll be able to put it down after 3-4 locals or whatever. And the funny part is I'd get to the buzz point, and then I'd go to the blackout point. I never even got to experience a good drunk again. And the feeling was so elusive in the very beginning that I spent the rest of my life chasing that. And that's that obsession. And I kept thinking that I could just pull it off one more time. If I just had enough willpower to do it like all these other people, they got enough God in their life to successfully use. I see people putting it down, and all outer appearances, they don't seem to have a problem. Why can't I do that? I did not want to admit that I was screwed up and that I had a disease, even living under a bridge and homeless. And, that's just the truth of the matter. So that's powerlessness to me, man. That's where I got, And this last round was no different. Facing 25 years on another charge with the cop, which I thank God for that police officer today. I really do. Just getting out of the Williamson County Jail again on a meth charge. I was really heading to do something good, but I was drinking a beer at a bus stop. And he put every wrong kind of charge on me that day because I wasn't drunk that day. I had slept from the meth the night before, and I had all of my bags with me because it was raining all week. That's why I hadn't gone to try to talk to my preacher friend to get in this place I was going to go to and try to get sober. But I know I would have probably stopped off under the bridge because his office was right down the road from there, and I might not have never made it, to be honest. But he gave me a PI, said I was drunk. It was over a couple of old warrants. And it was in Travis County, and I was in Williamson County. But he wanted to take me back to Williamson County Jail. He had it in for me. So he put me in cuffs, showed off in front of his police buddies, whatnot, and then I said some things. But I was in my right mind as far as I remember what I was doing. But I am very thankful for that cop today. I bashed my head up against this window and I said, I hope it makes you feel good. You've killed any chance I had of doing anything good. But it turned out that in that jail facing that 25-year charge, that's when God really stepped in. And I surrendered in jail to the fact that I got no choice because things weren't looking so good. I'm going to do 25 years in prison. And I've been in and out of jail all my life, institutionalized. And I just felt so bad about that. It's like, God, come on, give me a break. I've been locked up most of my life on the streets. And, here and there in an apartment until I ripped it out from underneath me, So, yeah, well, God did step in. They PR bonded me, which is American, from that jail. And that's how I ended up here in San Angelo, Texas. But even still, did good for a while at the Williams house. Man, I was really psyched about getting sober. I was going to have about 6 more places to go after that. I'm going to report back to them and maybe have to go to safety and get a reduced sentence and maybe a lot of probation on that 25 years if I succeeded in all these balanced treatment centers they wanted me to go to. This out here was the first one. So I got kicked to the curb over some medication. We couldn't get in touch with the jail doctor. I was short on medication. They couldn't have me in there without my medication in the Williams house. So I was kicked to the streets. And there's that choice. And the first person I saw was a homeless guy with a sign walking down the street. Salvation Army over here. Home bum over here. The old familiar over there. And that's what I did. Picked up a drink. From there, I lived about a couple weeks out here in the streets. I got a phone number from a couple people that came under a bridge. And I called from a motel phone, called my preacher friend, and that's how I got to the Hatchery House. I was in violation on a PR bond. But we talked to the PR guy. They gave me some grace. And I started working the steps. That's when I came to these rooms. I was sitting under that bridge that day about to leave, and those same 2 people came back. The day I was going to hop the train. I was going to just hop the train out of here going anywhere because, hey, man, I violated. I was going to do the 25. I done screwed up, I thought. But God got me to the Hatchery House. These 2 people did, and I've stayed the course since then. I came into these rooms and, started working these steps, but I knew I was real serious. After a couple of months at the Hatchery House, when I finally, laid it all down to God, I started working these steps, and I said, you know what? Regardless of circumstances or wherever you put me, whether I go to jail for 25 years or whatever it is, I'm going to still stay sober. I'm going to work these steps because I know that you have something better for me in life. And, I was just at my bottom. I was at that jumping off point. I came in these rooms, and I was still very delusional. They say, rigorous honesty and working these steps thoroughly from the start. I don't think I did that. To be totally honest with you, I think I bounced around in these things. They say that people hold on to old ideas, the results is nil. I think there were still a lot of them old ideas that I held on to. Self-will's been a struggle for me. Fear's been a struggle for me, even to this day. Fear can still be a struggle for me. But I can say one thing about this program. After I worked these steps, I rigorously and honestly, where I was at the time of working these steps, I was honest about it. God's also shown me some other things when I did a 4-step. Because my life is so sporadic and so scattered that not all of those events that I was supposed to make, or not all of those people that maybe should have been on that list were there. But I know when the other ones did come up, they were taken care of. Those names were taken care of. Those events were taken care of. I had some charges that I looked into in Phoenix, Arizona that did still the same. A disposition on a lot of drugs. There was a couple of people I couldn't find. But God brought to my attention those things later on. So I rigorously worked, I honestly worked this program to the best of my ability and got through the steps pretty fast. I think, about 3 months. Tony was my sponsor. And that was a life changer because I never really truly worked these steps. I never really truly worked these steps. I was still trying to control things. And to this day, that can happen sometimes. But this program fully equips me, and God fully equips me to handle any kind of situation when it comes to it. He's literally removed the obsession to drink and use. And man, I can tell you right now, man, I'm getting some hope that every single promise in this book I've experienced, man. This is the real deal. These steps are just simply designed to get me out of the way. Every single one of these steps is to get me out of the way, to show me who has the true power, to show me who's meant to manage my life, to what I'm designed to be used for, and that's for God's will. And however He sees fit for that to happen, it's in these rooms and in a lot of other places. That I am absolutely not in my sound mind. I don't have no sound reasoning, no sound judgment, no anything unless I have God in my life and I'm getting my discernment and my wisdom and my judgment from Him, to make my decisions. And, so that commitment in step 3, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to care of God as I understood Him. Here's the thing. I had to have a whole new idea because they talk about in this book, in the midst of all this, I would have, these grand spiritual ideas, and paths that I would try to follow and stuff, but never could follow through with them. Philosophical convictions galore, but could never live them out. And that was me, But the one thing I was able to live out when I was out there is trouble. Is ripping my life out from underneath me. It was getting high, getting drunk, going to jail. That was the old song. Well, the new song is, when I turn my will and my life over to the care of God and let Him step in, I had to start clearing up all that crap that has blocked me from God and His Holy Spirit out of my life. And that's all the nasty character defects, all the harm that I've caused people. And I had to own up to my part in it. Every bit of that stuff. I had to identify the insecurity. I had to identify how I abandoned my family. Because they abandoned me, I abandoned my family. I abandoned people. I abandoned all of that time that I could have gave to people if I was in my right mind doing the right thing. I had to start looking at my part in everything in life that I'd done on those, not just resentments, but a lot of other stuff. I was the one to blame because our troubles are basically of our own making. They arise out of ourselves, and I made my bed, so, with God's help, He gave me enough willingness and hit my back up against the wall too. He gave me enough willingness this time around to be able to own up to my part of things and enough sanity to do that. And then we're entirely ready to have Him remove these defects of character. And yeah, I was ready for all that crap to go, but those defects of characters get removed in His time. They get removed in His time. I started to learn that there are character defects that I never identified that I ever had until I sobered up. I think they talk about in the book that your character defects can become glaring. Being sober now and being in God's will and being accountable for my behavior, and not just jumping for that instant gratification or any external source to try to pull in, and being patient and waiting on the Lord and all that stuff for, trusting in God. That's a whole other ball game for me, man. But what it boils down to is whenever I do that, I'm finding that God is not only testing me and taking those character defects that I had, He's turning it into character assets, and He's turning it into assets that look like Him, not me. He's totally 100% using me for His testimony. Because, through this whole process of all of this drug and alcohol use, I started so young. The hand of God's always been in my life. I've been separated from God, but He's always been there. And I see that if I look back on the overdoses, the jail, the many opportunities of rehabs, the many opportunities of Him putting me in front of the 12 steps at 13 years old in a room full of old timers smoking cigarettes and all that. God already had known. I truly believe that I was going to end up in these rooms and that this is where I was going to help people. And that I'm an alcoholic, and today, that is one of the greatest things I think is being exposed to these steps and working these steps, and the fellowship of the Spirit. The people I meet in these rooms, I see true discipleship. I've had so many people disciple me. Tony, I've had 3 different sponsors, Brian, Jerry Green, just all you guys, man, here, man. And, I was just a self-centered drunk and drug addict, that didn't care about anybody but himself out there, honestly, and how to get high and how to get drunk. I was troubled, and that's not how God made me to be. So I fit in here, and I have no shame in it. So the message is that every single spiritual tool is laid at our feet here. And in another book they say that we are co-heirs with Christ, that we have every spiritual heavenly blessing, that we are equipped with the full armor of God to overcome and to conquer anything that the enemy that's out to kill, steal, and destroy. Sounds very familiar, just like this disease. It's out to kill, steal, and destroy. That's exactly what it does. In the last, I don't know how many friends that I've lost, close friends. Some of them were on the streets, but even my own brother died in his addiction. He was murdered, but he was a full-blown drug addict. It's a sad thing. People hung, people shot in execution style, several overdoses. I'm truly grateful that God has allowed me to come to these rooms and make it. Because there's a lot of people that don't. And that's a serious thing. That's a serious thing that, it's a strong delusion that this disease puts us under. Strong delusion. That makes us think that we could do it again and again. And until we just die. And I believe now in eternity after this. And I know that I want to spend mine with my Heavenly Father and, in heaven, and not in hell. Because the addiction itself is hell. I could only imagine the other. And it's sad but true, I'm not the judge of that, but I have a lot of friends that are probably there. It's just a sad thing. But on the bright side of this program, man, I'll just tell you, God can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. The feeling of uselessness does slip away. To be really truly used by God without having any expectation of anything back from anybody, because an expectation screws you over every single time. You put your expectations on any other human being, you're the ones being selfish by putting your expectations on another human being. Your expectations should be on God, because He always comes through. He's the only faithful one that I know of. But you can't see God working through people's lives. But if you start depending on that person over God, then you got problems. You're going to be sadly disappointed. And I've done that. Relationships, tried that one. Geographical changes, tried that one. Where, wherever you go, there you are. I'm the sick one. Just trouble in a new town. That's all it was back then, trouble in a new town. So today, I know that God is going to use me however He sees fit, and I'm just truly grateful that I've come into contact with the Solutions Group out here in San Angelo, and I've ran into people that really work this program. It's not watered down. They're not shy to talk about God, and I'm not shy to talk about God either, because if it wasn't for my Creator, if it wasn't for the living God, I would have manipulated the situation. You can't manipulate God. You just can't do it. He is definitely a miracle worker. And this book, if you follow the simple, they say it's a simple program and they don't lie. If you follow the simple instructions in this book, I guarantee you'll get a relationship with the Creator of this universe. And I guarantee He'll step into your life and He will change everything. Everything. And He'll do it on His time. But it's a daily surrender for me, man. It can be a roller coaster ride sometimes, but, I've been living off of 84 through 88 quite a bit lately. Those pages have the best instructions on how to stay in God's will. How to start my day off, how to end my day, how to go through my day. That if my focus is on things above and on others throughout the day, on not getting overwhelmed, pausing when agitated, not just when agitated, just pausing throughout the day and saying, God, thy will be done. And surrender and control over again and again and again on some days. And some days I have the total bad side of 84 through 88, and I get stuck in a spot, and I get back to that place to where, and that's the awesomeness of the grace of God is, and the spirit and accountability of the sponsor and people in this program and this book is you can get back on track. You can get back on track. And it's your choice how long you want to stay in that, or how long you want to, if you want to get peace. And that's what it is for me. I can either stay in that irritable and discontentment, or I can surrender it over. So there's been a lot of absolutely surrenders in this program. It's not been like one time for me, I absolutely surrendered. It's final. I've done this thing rigorously and thoroughly from the very start. It hasn't been that way with me. But I have, as I've gone along, and now that I'm working with other people, I'm starting to see what rigorous honesty is and what thoroughness is and what this program's really about. And that's carrying the message, and that's helping somebody else out. And that's allowing God to use me to be a light to other people that are in that darkness of addiction, that are still caught up in that delusion. It's to be a message of hope, because there is hope. There is hope in these rooms. I didn't think it was possible to go a day without not thinking about picking up and using. I didn't think that was possible, but I haven't thought of picking up and using it in almost over 2-something years. Those lurking notions, they haven't come back at all. There have been a few times in this program to where I got out of sorts and thought about but my mind wasn't on the drugs, but I thought about going, just screw this, I'm out of here. But I very quickly got back to my right mind, because I don't want to taste of that life ever again. I don't think I'll make it back to these rooms this next time around. So that's really all I got, man. This program gives you every spiritual tool, equips you with everything you need to get clean and sober. There is hope. You can stay clean, sober, connected with God, have a life of peace, hope. You can be of real use to help others. God can take a total screw up like me, he can do it for you. You know, and it's all about his testimony, man, to show that he's the one with the power, the true power. And you know, he's the one that saves life. He's literally my savior, and he's the one that holds the power. He's the one that holds the keys, and I'm thankful for that, because if I did, Lord have mercy. That's all.